I'm Fathery.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 107th Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And today we are here to talk about the Star Trek Universe panel presented at San Diego Comic-Con at home.
AKA their virtual Zoom-driven panel for all things Trek for the upcoming year.
Yeah, with our COVID version of Comic-Con that we're given this year.
It's a little bit of kind of a little just scraps instead of a meal.
Yeah, compared to like the larger presence that Star Trek's had at San Diego Comic-Con in recent years, this was a much smaller showing. It was a short panel, less than an hour and a half. Everything was pre-recorded, and there was not a whole lot of content in it as far as things that we might have expected in previous years, like new trailers or new announcements. We did get a little bit of news and a little bit of new content, but obviously because of the pandemic, because they are not able to get production started on a lot of things, they don't know how long it's going to take them to finish post-production on other things. You know, they're kind of in an awkward situation, so it is what it is.
Yeah. And, I'll say this. I did enjoy watching it just to kind of see all the cast members from all the different shows or, voice actors and behind-the-scenes people, but largely the big cast members just up there doing their thing, talking about what to expect. Marina Sirtis giving Patrick Stewart shit, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, that was a highlight for sure. Yeah, I was just a little disappointed with the format, how it was all pre-recorded. I was originally thinking they were just going to do this live, which is kind of similar to what they typically do when they have an on-stage convention panel. They stream a lot of that stuff live as it's going on. But the one thing that I do want to talk about that we've had a lot of this year, one of the, I would say, positives is the virtual con experience. There's been a lot of these events online where people can kind of get what you would expect from a convention as far as seeing panels, getting to maybe ask some Q&A questions with actors or writers from Star Trek. Unfortunately, the San Diego Comic-Con at Home panel that was the official thing from CBS was a disappointment compared to some of the other things that have been going on lately. So I do want to just let people know that they have these other options. Everything is free to check out. The one that I want to send people to right now, because it just happened like a week ago, but check out the YouTube channel, The Seventh Rule. I'll have a link in the description. That is the YouTube channel that belonged to Aaron Eisenberg and Cirroc Lofton, the actors who played Nog and Jake on DS9. And they've been reviewing Star Trek. I think not just Deep Space Nine that they're going back and rewatching, but I think they were also talking Picard and Discovery. But after Aaron passed away, Cirroc has kept the thing going, and they had some really cool panels that you can watch on their YouTube channel. They had Ira Stephen Bear, the DS9 showrunner. They had Doug Jones from Discovery, Robert Beltran from Voyager, a bunch of actors from various shows, writers from various shows. Some cool stuff. So I'll have a link to them, and everyone should check that out if it sounds interesting to you. It's basically like a free convention that you can enjoy from your home.
Hosted by the best of friends from the Deep Space Nine. I mean, that's pretty cool. And now continued, obviously, on in his name.
Yeah, and Aaron's wife is actually she's involved on there. She seems to be she's like a really big Star Trek fan too. So
that's awesome.
So moving on to the panel that we are going to discuss, the Star Trek universe. Kind of all the shows that we know of, for the most part, were mentioned. Some of these we'll have more to talk about than others, but just to give you a quick rundown, we're going to talk about the Nickelodeon Trek, Star Trek Prodigy, finally got an official name, a little bit of Star Trek Strange New World, Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Lower Decks, and Star Trek PICARD. Some of the things that they were doing was a live script reading with the Star Trek Discovery actors. They had a clip from Lower Decks that I think was probably the biggest takeaway here. They had some Q&A stuff with the PICARD cast, and we'll just kind of run through it and give our thoughts on each one.
Yeah, I think the one advantage to the edited and not pre-recorded thing is that it is pretty tightly done. So if you were to sit down and watch this just to kind of enjoy seeing those actors and producers and stuff chatting, you will get a pretty concise experience. And since it is a little content light, it might be good that it's just an hour and a half. But I felt like it was a pretty entertaining experience. So I do recommend people check it out, even if you maybe only just jump around a little bit in it.
Sure, and we'll have a link to the entire panel if you want to check that out. That'll be linked in the description of wherever you are listening or watching us from. You should be able to access it.
Shall we dive right on in?
Sure, let's start at the very beginning. First show that they talked about was Star Trek Prodigy.
And what's that? I've never even heard of Star Trek Prodigy. What are you even talking about?
Yes, you have. I've told you about it. This name.
No, but it didn't have the name until now. It didn't have the name.
We heard Prodigy. It was leaked off of John Eves's website.
Right. But this is the formal announcement.
Yes. Of it. We have a name and we have a logo.
I don't have it right in front of me to look at. Didn't it? How would you describe the logo, Father? Was it kind of Nickelodeon-ish?
I guess it was colorful, and it said Nickelodeon on top of it. But the thing that I thought was kind of neat was it has the command insignia on kind of a stylized delta. So I don't know, does that mean the show might take place in TOS era? Given the description that we've heard of it about how it's lawless teens on a Starfleet ship that start to learn Starfleet type values, that makes me think maybe it's in this post-apocalyptic future that Discovery has gone to. We don't know many details other than the fact that the Hageman brothers, I've been saying their name wrong. I think I said, I always say Hageman, but when Heather Kasdan said it, she said, or actually I believe Hageman brothers. They're the guys who did Troll Hunter and what's that horror movie that you like?
I don't know. Troll
Scary Stories. Scary
Stories to Tell in the Dark. Yeah.
Okay.
From last year.
So they're the ones behind the Star Trek show. But yeah, that's pretty much all that we know, other than the things we've known all along, that it will be on Nickelodeon and it will be aimed towards a younger audience.
Prodigy has the minor sort of bad association with, if there was one Star Trek character, you'd say, oh, who was a Prodigy? Well, it was probably Wesley Crusher.
Yeah.
And some people don't have the best of warmest of feelings about poor Wes. But I think it'll have little to do with the show overall anyway. But I'll be curious to see how they end up pitching it. Maybe that Starfleet Delta is just a broad representation of Starfleet philosophy that the kids will come to grow into or something.
I did like that they described it as coming out in 2021. So I guess that show, kind of like Lower Decks, it was still able to go into production because animation is easy to do remotely, whereas live action production is not easy to do remotely. You have to send everyone a green screen to hang up at home behind their webcam, I guess.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
I had a darkly amusing idea. This is maybe something for... what do you call it? Rick and Morty or South Park, probably. some show that is able to be produced while everything else is on hold. And you got the characters talking about how because they're cartoons and they don't even really exist in three-dimensional space, they don't have to worry about catching COVID, and then they start coming down with it. Like I said, it's darkly humorous. I think that it needs to happen to like Cartman and the rest of those guys.
Maybe. But it sounds like we can next year have another season of Lower Decks and Star Trek Prodigy. And I don't know about Discovery. We'll talk more about Discovery in a little bit, but I'm not sure if we're going to get Discovery this year after all, or if it's actually going to get pushed back to next year. But we will get some Star Trek content next year, it sounds like. Alex Kurtzman and Heather Caden also talked about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the show I am most excited for, our Captain Pike spinoff. And Kurtzman said that they have a broken story for 10 episodes. The writer's room has been working on that.
Breaking a story, does that mean that they are hashing out a first draft? What does that mean?
Google it.
No, but our listeners need to know.
Most people are familiar with that term, I think. No, really? That means
do it for your fucking partner, man.
That's when the writers are in a room and they're kind of just tossing together story ideas, and they're like, oh, well, what if we do an episode where Captain Pike turns into a frog? I don't know. But then they kind of break the story beat by beat what's generally going to happen, and then normally that will eventually be assigned to one person to write the script to it.
Okay. So definitively pre-script stage kind of stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if there's going to be only 10 episodes or if there's going to be more than 10 and they've only broken 10. But because this is going to be a show that's written a little differently, where they're going to do what they've described as more TOS style episodic stories that are kind of done in one episodes with their own self-contained beginning, middle, and end. I think it might be beneficial that they're getting the extra time from the COVID pandemic shutdown to iron out those scripts. It's going to be a change of pace for some of these people, I think. So that might be a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But as part of the Star Trek Discovery Season 2 cast that wasn't in attendance to do a script reading, I almost said a live script reading, but no, it wasn't live. But they did a script reading of the Star Trek Season 2 finale. But that included Anson Mount and Ethan Peck and Rebecca Romaine. So they did talk to them a little bit about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and we didn't hear much. I doubt that there's much that they even know themselves. But I thought what was interesting is Anson Mount and Ethan Peck, they both kind of talked about how it sounds like the characters are going to be very much in a continuation of where we saw them on Discovery. Pike, based on what Anson Mount said, he's going to be kind of dealing with the knowledge of his eventual fate that was given to him by the time crystal.
Yeah.
That he knows he's going to end up paralyzed in the chair that we see in the original series and the Menagerie. Ethan Peck talked about Spock and his struggle to find balance between his human side and his Vulcan side after losing his sister here. But yeah, that's all that we really got as far as Strange New Worlds. I'm still really excited for it though.
Father, let me quick. I'm just going to read. I was looking at some page and they had just transcribed what he said. And I thought it was kind of an interesting, what he said about Pike. He said, the biggest thing was seeing my future. When you see how it's all going to end, that it's not so pretty, what do you do with that? I think there's a reason we only see our past because we're a very neurotic species and we wouldn't know how to comport ourselves. So the question becomes, how do you move forward? I think he's going to wrestle with how he can best utilize the rest of his life for the good of the world, the universe. And that is something interesting. I mean, that episode certainly brought his kind of heroism to the fore, knowing that this is going to be his fate, and it's a pretty unique situation. I can't think of really any other major Star Trek characters who've known how they're going to end or whatever.
Yeah,
and I think that's, if nothing else, that's going to be some interesting internal logistics, something that'll inform every scene he's in, and presumably will, speak to some, many of his characters' actions. Is he going to be like literally like, I'm living on borrowed time, I got to like make every moment count? Or is there, I can easily see that where, like, if I know they don't have a ship's counselor, but I can imagine somebody who's like a close friend saying, hey, slow down, dude, enjoy some life. You don't need to like be changing the world with the, every 5 minutes.
Well, my fear is that I don't want that to weigh so heavily that it's like constantly being brought up. But if they can be a little bit more reserved and only occasionally mention it, I think they could do some interesting things. Just overall, I love the idea of Captain Pike being this kid who like grew up hearing a lot of theology stuff from his dad. We learned about in Star Trek Discovery. We saw in his first appearance in the cage when the Telosians torture him by putting him in a recreation of hell based on a fable he heard as a child. He knows about like the Judeo-Christian afterlife and like these concepts of heaven and hell, and the idea that he does the right thing knowing that it was going to condemn him to something horrific and something hellish. But in the end, we'll get that moment of Spock saving Pike from that eternity and instead taking him to Talos 4 to be with this woman he loves in this total fantasy world, basically a version of heaven. And right. I like that all is going to come together naturally like that, based on something that was created in 1964 and no one had ever planned any of this out. I think that's really cool. And I love Anson Mount's Pike, and I'm looking forward to seeing this type of show.
I think I agree with you. I hope that they keep it on the subtle side, and that'll come down to the writers. I think because they're going episodic, I do think it probably won't be, like this thing that every episode he's gonna be angsting over. But yeah, hopefully they don't get too carried away with it.
But as for, Star Trek Discovery, there were like a little bit of teasing here and there about season 3 after they did their script reading. They did a little bit of Q&A with the actors, and also Michelle Paradise, the writer-producer, who I think Star Trek Discovery is kind of her baby now, under the larger Alex Kurtzman umbrella. She's the one who's kind of the showrunner for Discovery, kind of how Michael Chabon was running Star Trek PICARD Season 1. And I have really good feelings about Michelle Paradise, even though I'm very uncertain about Season 3 of Discovery. I have no interest in this far-flung future they're going to, and I'm hoping that the show gives me a reason to be invested in that type of story. But Michelle Paradise, she wrote, I think it's the Project Daedalus, the episode where it was directed by Jonathan Frakes. That was where Arium died. And I thought that episode was so cool because they're trying to make us care about Arium, and it sucks that they waited till the episode they kill her to do it. But I liked how they kind of fleshed out some of the bridge crew in that episode that we typically don't see a lot, and we kind of see them hanging out and being friends. It felt a lot more like a traditional Star Trek crew, and so I'm very happy to see that writer kind of taking over the show.
Yeah, kind of like she did the best that could be done with a overly crunched in situation.
Yeah. That's what writing. I said when we covered that over a year ago. That's what I said. I like the writing on this, and one thing that she talked about is that in season 3 of Discovery, we're going to see the crew become a little bit more of a. Well, I don't think she said we'll see them become more of a family, but she said that they're going to play that side of it up more, and it might be kind of like a Voyager thing, where they're stranded, they're separated from where they belong. And, you kind of just have to bond with the people that you're going through that with.
Yeah, a little bit like soldiers over on a mission or something like that. It's like you're in a heightened sort of closeness.
And I don't know if there is anything else remarkable from the Discovery panel or Discovery segment of the panel that you want to bring up.
It was interesting when they went around and talked to people that Michelle Yeoh said that that she thinks that Georgiao is pissed off.
Oh yeah, she's gonna be pissed off in the beginning of season 3. Yeah, I don't blame her because she defeated their enemy Leyland when he turned into control, but like they still like jumped into the future anyways, and no one really explained why they did that. And I kind of hate that season 2 finale for being so fast and loose and not satisfying with their conclusion to their Red Angel story arc. Or maybe she's mad because she's in Star Trek Discovery season 3 and she's already eager to be on her own show, on the Section 31 show.
I mean, they are keeping her from. She did mention like the power the character has, that is just kind of is inherent to her. So yeah, like everything, it's keeping the actress as well from getting her starring role. So I know you're kind of joking, but I could actually see that somewhat informing the character.
Yeah, I think somewhere in there's going to be an episode or something where she gets sent back in time.
I noticed one of the that would make sense. I noticed one of the actors, when they accidentally started to talk over her in the Zoom session, was like, "Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt Michelle," or whatever. And there was like a little deference as if she was her character.
Yeah, as if she was the Terran Emperor.
Yeah. I also noted that Wilson Cruz mentioning that Colbert he felt was more three-dimensional in this one.
Yeah,
kind of had more to do, and I thought that was a good sign.
He also kind of mentioned something about Colbert and like a new role on Discovery, and said something about mental health. And I might be reading too much into it, but it made me kind of think like, oh, is Colbert going to become like the ship's counselor or something like that? But
oh, that's interesting.
I was probably reading too much into that, but
probably maybe so. But that would be interesting. I think he could have the temperament for it, and the doctors before there was ever a ship's counselor role clearly played that role to a large degree, just informally.
And we have like another doctor on the ship. We have Dr. Pollard, the woman doctor. Right. So maybe we don't need 2 medical doctors. One of them can be a counselor. I don't know.
We'll find out. Oh, I wanted to just quick jump back and mention that I don't know if this will mean anything, but I noticed that I remember that Doug Jones, in talking about Discovery, somebody asked him if they were going to see some more Kelpians, and he felt like, I mean, he's not the show's writer or one of the writers, but he did seem to indicate in his talk that he felt that the Kelpians would continue to have a bigger role to play in Starfleet. And since they've become a pretty memorable new race, I think that'd be cool to do that, in a way that, the Andorians and the Tellarites just kind of showed up once or twice to wave in the original series, and they were clearly major races, but they didn't have a lot to do. So, I want Disco to break that, and if they come up with a cool new race, let's see more of them.
Well, we'll see. It's 1,000 years later, so the Kelpians are going to be alien to Saru himself.
Quite possibly, and that's assuming that the whole thing takes place 1,000 years later, and that they don't sneak back at some point. Or
they said they're not doing that. They said, they said like. Because someone asked them a while back, like, was it going to be kind of like Voyager, where like they're trying to get home, and they said like, no, like our characters are going to accept that there is no going back, like they're stuck here.
Yeah, well, you can accept it and still find it happens.
Yeah, but I don't. It sounds like that's not something that they plan on building to.
Okay.
But who knows? I mean, the whole reason why they're going is because these writers were like, oh, it's too hard to write a 23rd century Star Trek. Let's go to the far future. And I mean, they might be like, oh, it's too hard to write this far-flung future. Let's go back to the more well-known time period. So
I feel like you might be editorializing a little bit, Father.
Yeah,
I am. I don't. I've got to see what they do with it before I can feel that there's any right or wrong to their decisions. So I will let you be a little sad sack about it. You can go unchallenged. Anything else on Discovery?
No, I think we should go ahead and move on to the biggest one, the juiciest one that we have to talk about, and that is Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yep.
They opened with
this is one where we actually got the one thing that had a clip.
Yeah, and we knew we were going to get this. They said that they were going to have a clip, some type of like special sneak peek at the first episode of the show. And when I saw it, I was thinking like, oh, this might be like the actual opening of the show. And I have since learned that, yes, that is correct. This is the first 2 minutes of the show. So I like that for spoiler reasons. I kind of don't like to watch clips for stuff before they come out. And if you are going to show me something, I'd prefer it to be the very beginning, so it's not to spoil anything else.
Well, it's funny. One or maybe two of the voice actors in talking about the show started talking about things they're clearly not supposed to talk about, and they just bleep them out.
Oh yeah, that's like and it's funny because then like they'll unbleep it for a little bit, and you'll catch like 2 or 3 words where they're just like, you're like, yeah, so I really like this part. We're like beep, but then like none of it worked because of beep, and it was just the launch of beep. Like it was kind of funny how they did that. But yeah, they had several of the voice actors. I guess we should go ahead and name them. We had Tawny Newsome, who is going to play Ensign Mariner, Jack Quaid, who's going to play Ensign Boimler, Noel Wells as Ensign Tindy, Eugene Cordero as Ensign Rutherford,
right?
Gillian Vigman as Dr. Tana. I thought it was Tiana, but apparently you pronounce it Dr. Tana. Fred Tatasciore, I'm sorry if I butchered that name, as Lieutenant Shax. Jerry O'Connell as Commander Ransom, and Don Lewis as Captain Freeman.
Yep. It was cool to see all of those folks. I hadn't gotten my visual lock on them. I hadn't watched a whole bunch of the behind-the-scenes stuff or panels previous to this. And I thought they were all very animated, as it were, with sort of enthusiasm and energy, talking about their favorite episodes already, and things, just stuff that they thought was cool about their characters. How the show people would react who were Star Trek fans, who were not Star Trek fans, but might come in through animation fandom or other stuff like that. They were an enthusiastic and energetic lot. It kind of raised my interest a little bit in it.
Yeah, and I never thought of this before, but yeah, every Trek is somebody's first Trek, and Lower Decks is going to be somebody's first Star Trek.
Yeah, strange but true. And I was on some message board earlier or a Facebook group, and somebody was talking about their kid who saw some Deep Space Nine, I think, with them, they're adolescent kid who kind of liked some of it but wasn't super into it, and then happened to watch some Star Trek animated from the 70s with them, and then I think was finally plugging in with some other show. But it was interesting to think about just the strange bouncing around journey of this kid, which the more Trek there is, the more oddball journeys they're going to be. There's people who Rogue One was their first Star Wars movie or whatever. So yeah, it's just that's the kind of the world we live in, and of course it has to be on the producer's mind all the time.
Let's talk about the clip itself. It opens with Ensign Boimler giving a captain's log. We saw this in the trailer. He's kind of pretending to be a ship's captain. I actually think that's really funny. I like that. I could see characters like Harry Kim or Sylvia Tilly, people who we know has young people with these big ambitions, doing the same thing.
Yep.
And then he's interrupted by Mariner, who starts making fun of him.
She's taking the piss.
Yeah, we get the really cool setting of the starbase. It looks like a traditional Star Trek space dock. First seen in Star Trek 3. It was Douglas Station, I believe, was what they said was the name of it. And apparently they're on shore leave, and Mariner is drunk. And I'm kind of liking all this stuff. It's funny. I like the visuals. But then it got a little too silly for me when she drops. She talks about how, first of all, how cool it is to have this Romulan whiskey she bought or acquired somehow. But then she drops it, breaks it, doesn't care about it, like a cartoon character, pulls out the batleth, and then accidentally slices off part of Boimler's leg, and to me, they started acting more like cartoon characters than Star Trek characters. I was like, oh, this is like really cool, and then it got like a little silly and dumb here, and there's kind of a whiplash effect that I kind of experienced watching the clip. What about you?
I mean, similar. In a weird way, it might be almost easier for me to make my peace with it if I end up finding it funny enough. Maybe easier for me than you. We should say, you said kind of cut part of his leg off. It's not that like half his leg went flying away. It looks like it literally landed on his inner thigh, and like it chunks a bit of chunk. It just lands in there. Nothing gets cut off completely, but it's obviously deep open, right where your like femoral artery or whatever.
Yeah,
would be.
Well, like you see his bone. And
do you actually?
I think so. Yeah, I think you see like white bone in there, and it just felt really cartoony. And then there's like the silent.
By the way, when you say it, and then when I say it, it sounds super gross. But it's like if you saw that on Simpsons or Family Guy. There's not blood spraying everywhere. It's just
there is blood. There is blood spraying.
Oh, is there?
It's like the dumbest, most cartoony thing, where like she cuts him, and then they both are just like paused and silent. And so then you can get like that funny moment when they both like start screaming and react at the same time. And that moment, like when they react, that's like when the blood starts squirting out, and you hear like a little squirt sound effect with it. And it to me, like, yeah, it felt more like a cartoon than Star Trek. I really want this show to feel more like Star Trek than a cartoon.
You know, there was a great bit on the Orville where their robot dude gets into a prank contest with one of the characters, and while that character is asleep, the robot guy goes in and amputates his leg safely, but the guy comes onto the bridge with only one leg, and he's like, "You got me," or whatever. I actually thought that was pretty funny. It's weirdly a similar kind of strangeness, but it's typical of that weird line the Orville walks, and so maybe this is done more. This has the comic timing, the boom 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 comic timing that is typical of a lot of shows nowadays. I think a lot of cartoons nowadays have sort of this style, and that was more what bothered me, which was the ones where I think it's very voice actor driven. I also think it follows in the style of that's actually Seth MacFarlane sort of pioneered on Family Guy, and also probably that on South Park. Who are the guys who do South Park?
Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Well, I think this all started with The Simpsons. This all started with The Simpsons. It all started with The Simpsons. These like adult comedy, animated adult comedies.
It's actually more specific than that, though. It's those things where you might let a voice actor. I feel like I think sometimes in South Park, but maybe more on what was the other one I just
Family Guy.
Family Guy said. I think especially Family Guy, where it's almost like they're just kind of improving and just like running with a joke, the same way that Mariner was just kind of like, like when she was doing her force field bit in the other trailer, or where she's kind of drunkenly talking about her batleth and stuff like that. It's got a certain vibe of almost improv, but that will then be later animated, where they kind of run with the joke for a little while. And there's something about that timing and that particular cartoon style. It's not just the absurdity; it's that kind of that brand of silly characterization, I guess I'd say, that kind of bugs me more. I don't know if I can quite pin down why it does, but it just sounds like it's not really quite how people talk. It's a weird quasi approximation of it.
I get what you're saying,
and so. I'm still right where I was back in the day, back before I'd seen a single clip of this, which is it seems a little too silly for me on the surface. If that ends up, but like maybe it like in 20-30 minute dose, it's going to be okay because I'll have plugged into it, or there will be a little bit of drama here and there that will make it more counterbalanced for me. So I didn't particularly. The clip didn't do anything for me, is the sad truth.
Yeah, well, I've seen enough stuff from like the trailer for this show that I know there's going to be a ton of stuff in here that I like, and I saw stuff in this clip that I liked. But I'm also beginning to understand that there's probably going to be frequent things in here that frustrate me. So it's just going to be a balancing act. Hopefully, what I like outweighs what I dislike, and it's something I can just like get used to and accept. I like everything that Mike McMahon has said about this show, and I think a lot of that hasn't been reflected in the clip or the trailer. So I think there's still a lot to be seen. And this first episode that we're going to get in.
A lot to be seen, or Mike McMahon is a dirty, dirty liar.
Yeah, well, we'll find out soon, though. We don't have long to wait, so that's a good thing.
Who is the guy? What is the name of the character who's like the big, bulky dude, the Bajoran guy out from the bridge crew?
Lieutenant Shax, yeah, that Shax. Voice actor, he sounds like J.K. Simmons demanding Spider-Man photos, kind of. Yeah, except even like more gruff and authoritative.
Yeah, I instantly liked, just hearing him talk in character.
Yeah, that was great.
What does he say? How the guy is like almost, it sounded like a comedic version of how Worf was in Star Trek Next Generation, but especially the early seasons, where he's like, what does he say? Communicate. We need to communicate.
He wants like the most aggressive response to everything.
Yeah, he either improv'd something or he maybe did a line where he's like, what was it he said?
He said something like, "We're being held," and Lieutenant Shax would be like,
held them with fire, or something like that. Yeah,
I held them back by opening fire.
It cracked me up because of his delivery, and because I could see that it was kind of probably a good skewering of that sort of unfortunate writing that had Worf always doing that. And there were several other little bits like that. So that's the positivity I took away, which was that when you hear the cast kind of just doing their thing, I kind of liked it better than just the one random clip they showed.
Yeah, and also Tawny Newsome talked about how she thought that Ensign Mariner was a lot like her own personality, and she thanked Mike McMahon for writing the character so close to her real personality. And she seems really funny to me. Mariner's the character that I think I might like the most, as long as she doesn't get too like annoying, running around drunk, cutting people up with batleths. That type of like irresponsible Starfleet officer who's I have a hard time imagining like not getting drummed out of Starfleet. If they toned that down, I think I'm really going to like this character. But also the other one that stood out to me was Jerry O'Connell when he talked about playing Commander Ransom and how Mike McMahon was talking about, we can tell certain stories with this ship because it's not that important. They're like the second contact ship. And then I think Jerry O'Connell was channeling his character when he's like, hold on now, the Cerritos is very important to Starfleet. And that's how like Commander Jack Ransom, he's a guy who like takes his job like real seriously. And like, I think he's probably a character who might think of himself as like the Commander Riker or Captain Kirk type. Like that's what he's aiming for.
Yeah. I agree. The fact that they kind of, that he was able to instantly kind of put himself in his character's shoes to improv essentially is pretty cool.
And I don't want like the captain, Captain Freeman. Like I don't want her to like seem like an idiot or like a goofball character. I want her to seem like someone who would actually command a ship in Starfleet. And I kind of like seeing like hearing from Dawn Lewis on the character. Like she seems kind of like parental, like kind of like motherly, and like that kind of like that captain way. Like I can see her as like the more serious authority figure on the ship.
Yeah, for sure. I got, really mostly good vibes off of the various little snippets that I caught from everybody. There was something she said funny, but I can't remember what it is now.
I don't know if it's what I'm thinking of. I kind of don't want to say it, because if anyone didn't see this, they give away a little bit of some plot details. Like something like the captain does with like Ensign Mariner, and I'm kind of like, I'd rather like not know about that. Also, like, They make some comment about Boimler and kind of, I guess, what his relationship status is, and hinted at like an episode that's going to explore something. And I was like, I kind of don't want to know this stuff. Just let me wait and watch it.
Yeah, I can imagine they were all tempted to say something because they clearly had little that they could officially reveal.
Yeah. And we're so close to this show. I like that we haven't heard a ton of Lower Decks.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go into the stuff, and a lot of it's going to be very fresh when we see it.
For sure. Are we on to Picard?
The last show that we're going to talk about. And this one, there was really nothing new that we could kind of like analyze or share with you. These people don't know much about Star Trek Picard Season 2. I mean, that show is kind of going to be a while before they go into production, so they were just kind of talking about like their experience on Season 1. All these actors kind of seemed to kiss ass to Patrick Stewart, and Marina Sirtis was there to call him out on it, which was hilarious.
She did it every time, too. Like, somebody would say something, and she'll be like, stop.
She'd be like, stop it, you Picard lot. It took us years to train him, and now you're going to make him insufferable.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. By the way, she was looking pretty hot there, too. I just want to say. She was definitely one of those ones who I feel like she chose to get herself a little bit made up. Or either that or she's just always like that. Yeah, they tended to talk about like the philosophy of the show. You know, Patrick Stewart said, talked about things that we'd heard him mention before, like how he spent a lot of time talking to the writers. They had to kind of persuade him, and that it was so key to him that the character had really changed and even experienced this sadness and all that stuff in his life. But yeah, there wasn't too much about where they were going forward from here.
Yeah, but it was fun to hear Marina. I love her. And the other cool thing is that our friend Starfleet Boy had one of his questions read when they did their Q&A segment here. And he asked, I think the question was directed to Michelle Hurd and Jerry Ryan, but Starfleet Boy asked, if you could bring anything back in time from the 24th century of Star Trek, what would it be? Or I'm paraphrasing, it was something along those lines, but they had like a pretty good answer. They had a good response or answer where they were talking about, like the compassion and the equality stuff. And then I got to hear Jonathan Frakes weigh in, and he said, I love like when he goes in like his dad voice, where he's like, now let me tell you something, son. Like he gets like real serious, but he was like, Gene Roddenberry had an idea that there would be no poverty, no hunger, no greed, no sexism, no racism in the future. And it reminded me of when I was a kid, I saw an interview with Jonathan Frakes when I was kind of first getting into Star Trek. And he kind of did the same thing then, where he said, when I worked on Star Trek The Next Generation, Gene Roddenberry came to me and he told me of this future he believed in, and he made me believe in it. And that made me believe in it.
It's interesting. That's the power of Riker over you.
Yeah.
As ambassador to Gene Roddenberry. By the way, I think that Starfleet Boy was fishing for an answer like, I would bring back a phaser or the holodeck or something like that. And they had to go and get all lofty and talk about Star Trek ideals and stuff. He wanted a pulp answer, or that's what I would have given him.
Yeah, I want one of the actors to be like, I would bring back a Type 3 phaser rifle.
Yeah. Or I'd bring back an Orion slave girl. What was I going to say? I lost my track. I was going to mention, speaking of the lofty things, though, they were kind of, I don't know if this was like this was the cause that they were kind of promoting in here. And I appreciated this was a recurring theme throughout this, which was that, so they were very specifically promoting the NAACP as a charity that for the Comic-Con, the virtual Comic-Con.
The NAACP Legal Fund, which is technically a different nonprofit.
Right, sure. And talking, overtly about Black Lives Matter and the need to stand behind that. And since a lot of them were talking about, I remember when they asked the Disco cast about, what they wanted or what they liked about the show or something like that, and all of them, they were kind of talking about the idealism of Trek. And one of the things that I think Mary Wiseman said that I thought was a good point was that it has to be kind of an ongoing thing, that they can't say, oh, we're done, everything is fixed in the future. Obviously, they're showing a future where a lot more is fixed maybe than it is now, but that it needs to reflect our times, and that their characters need to always be changing. we've seen Kirk overcoming a lot in the movies in regards to his feelings of Klingons and stuff like that. And so the idea of Trek philosophy being put into practice, I think, is good. And I did just appreciate that this whole this virtual convention was in service to an actual charity that's super relevant right now.
Yeah, and also in the description, I'll include a link in case anyone wants to make a contribution. That'll be available there as well.
Nice.
But I think that is pretty much it for the Star Trek Universe panel. So just would like to ask if anyone wants to share with us what you liked the most, or what your takeaway was, or what you didn't like. By all means, comment, tweet at us, comment on Facebook, let us know.
Right on.
And we'll be back next week to discuss the top 5 things we are looking forward to in Star Trek Lower Decks, because we're only less than 2 weeks away from the premiere of that show.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow me, Lower Decks, wow me.
And we're going to have a special guest with us. I'm not going to say who it is just yet, but he is the most enthusiastic for Lower Decks Star Trek content creator online that I am aware of. And that might give you a hint to who it is. But he'll be joining us, so it's gonna be a fun discussion. I'm curious how his optimism and enthusiasm and love for the show he hasn't even seen yet is going to weigh against Dave's reluctance and skepticism, and me, somewhere in the middle, but probably leaning more positive. So it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a fun dynamic, I think.
We'll see if there's a warp core meltdown. That's what I'm gonna have, an on-screen meltdown.
That will be out Sunday. Until then, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.